So I think there are different challenges, but I think the core issues of leadership are very similar in different roles. You have got to have the ideas and the strategies to move the discussion. You've got to get the organization behind those. You've got to have the right people to drive the, that's true regardless. Now, there are very different challenges for the individual. When I was running the New York City public schools for 8 years, obviously, it's a very intensely political set of issues, media driven. You're in the paper every day. There's a lot of crisis management. That's very different in the private sector. I mean, we're occasionally in the newspaper, but the politics of it are very different. So you're calling on different skills in terms of the kinds of things that you need to do and work on. But in the end, leadership has got to have a series of qualities that one brings to bear on the challenge. I was trying to change the New York City public school system. I'm now trying to develop technology products that I think will empower teachers and engage students. In order to do that, we've got 1,000 employees. In New York City, we had 135,000 employees. But if you don't get your people behind you in either organization, it's not going to matter. You can preach all you want about things. If you don't have a strong team to make sure your message is being driven through the organization, it's not going to matter. And those, to me, are the critical qualities of leadership. And a leader that doesn't have good management to support what she's doing is also going to find that it doesn't matter how great your vision is. A poorly managed great vision is no different than a well-managed poor vision. Indeed, you might be better off with the second than the first. So day in and day out, very different set of skills. But the overall leadership qualities and how you think about that and how you drive culture in an organization, how you spend your time. I always tell leaders, you know, there's just so much time. And think about it and look hard at what you're doing with yours. Those kind of things I think are very similar. But the daily menu of activities would look very different for me today than it would have done 3 or 4 years ago. The way you measure success in any organization, and I think Jim Collins in Good to Great wrote a lot about this, you measure success by defining what are the objectives that you want to meet, and then whether you've met them or not, and those that you meet, how you build on, and those that you haven't, how you correct for. So in the public school system, the outcome that mattered most to me was to increase the number of people graduating high school, prepared for college. That became both of those pieces, graduating high school and then prepared for college. That became a measure of success. There were other measures. I mean, how many new charter schools we opened, how many new small public high schools we opened, how successful we were in moving a system through a transition from a regional based to a sort of principal chosen set of management structures. And you know, we'd have metrics along the way that would measure those kind of things. In the private sector, obviously, in addition to student outcomes, which is where I think the success of our product has to go. If you don't have good student outcomes, I don't think there's going to be any adoption. But you also got to look at, obviously, the revenues and the success of the economics. If you don't have a successful economic and a business model that works, then you're not going to be able to stay in business. So looking at those pieces is, I think, different. Although one of the things that bothered me a lot in public, and it's not just public education, but in the public generally, is you don't hear much discussion of the issue of return on investment in the public sector. You hear that in the private sector, and it's an important piece. I think the public sector ought to look harder at that, because thinking about how we spend our money and what results we get for it. If you spend a lot of money, even if you get a small result, it may not be the wisest use of your dollars. Now, people like results as long as they're positive in education, but getting a small positive result for a big cash investment can be problematical. And as the country starts to think about, for example, moving towards something I support, which is large-scale implementation of universal pre-kindergarten education for our kids. But we have got to do more than simply look at the inputs and say, we gave kids an education. We've got to make sure we gave them a good education that has enduring benefit. And that's been part of the problem in K-12. And that's why I think we need to think about how much we're spending and what the return is, and make sure that the quality piece, as well as the actual programmatic piece, gets built into it right from the beginning. I think there are two key factors in how kids do in K to 12. One is the quality of their teachers, and second is the curriculum that the teachers are teaching. If you've got really great people teaching really demanding, tough stuff for kids to learn, both knowledge and skills, there's really an awful false dichotomy in my view in public education right now, is somehow we ought to teach kids how to be higher order thinkers and be complex problem solvers, and that knowledge is something you can look up on the internet. I don't buy that at all. I think kids who haven't read the great literature, who don't know how to do algebra and go on to do higher order math and so forth, are not going to be great problem solvers and have the skills necessary. So I think integrating a curriculum, putting it in the hands of great teachers. Now, how you make it easier and better for teachers to do what they're doing and for kids to get engaged. After all, if the teacher's got really good content that can help support what she's doing, and the kid absorbs much more of that, then you're much more likely to get them there. But in the end, education is going to be a human process, and second of all, it has got to be against very demanding standards in curriculum.